Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this edition of the news. We're beginning this newscast in the Limbe, in Bangui, in the northwest region of the Republic of Cameroon, where women living around the Mile 17 area are pressing and demanding for their children, husbands, and co-wives who were arrested yesterday following an explosion of a locally made explosive device in that area, and they went to the divisional officer of Bangui subdivision demanding that their children and husbands and fellow wives who were arrested be released to them, for they do not know where they were taken to after that incident occurred. And some of the women spoke to the press. Take a listen to one of the women who spoke to Mbustela and the divisional officer of Bangui in this extract.
Early in the morning, they came and took away all of our co-wives, children, and husbands. We don't know where the military took them to. Only a few of us are still in Mile 17. They have taken everybody away. That is why we have come to cry out to our Father to find out where our children, husbands, and fellow wives are.
I want to say all una go back in peace.
All of you should go back home in peace. Don't be troubled. I'm giving you the assurance.
Now me I the talk, I the assure now. I the give you the confidence.
So be rest assured that we just want to verify if there is any evidence against those arrested. If there is no evidence, some of your children will be back today.
Evidence. But if there is no evidence, some of you now soon I think will come back today.
From Bangui to the opaque city of Limbe in the southwest region of the country, and there we're going to be showing you the picture of the town ahead of the encounter that took place in the Game Stadium in that part of the southwest region of the country. And activities went on timidly yesterday ahead of the Group D match of the African Nations Cup played in the town of Limbe. Magic Angebre fans in details.
Circulation in the opaque city of Limbe was timid this Tuesday ahead of the Group D encounters of the African Nations Championship to be played at the Ngeme Stadium. Due to security reasons, commercial motorcycles were not allowed to transport persons to the stadium. And this did not go well with some bike riders in the opaque city of Limbe.
Now, so we be very, very glad for the Shan, but they know the really for one make us more understand.
We are happy to have the competition here, but unfortunately, we have been asked not to transport people to the pitch. We are praying for peace.
It happened. With the prayer, say, may God guide all of us and give us the strength so that we hold the Shan very well without any problem for country.
Around the market, business activities was on smoothly, but difficult to set eyes on sport gadgets being sold.
We feel fine and we're glad where the ball comes.
We are happy that the competition is here. We need just peace for everything to be okay.
We need peace, make everything work fine. We need joy. When peace is all in the work fine, no problem. Anybody feel free.
At major roundabouts in the town of Limbe, security was strengthened with officers posted.
Expectations are high that the United States of America could take tougher actions and decisions in the days ahead under the Joe Biden administration to solve some of the problems or to help solve some of the crises in some African countries, including Cameroon, and notably the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. During the confirmation hearing of the incoming Secretary of State, incoming Secretary of State, of course, highlighted some African countries, including Uganda, Ethiopia, and Cameroon, and specifically mentioned the Anglophone crisis. Take it, listen.
You know, my long concern for Africa There was just a deeply flawed election in Uganda, where Museveni has again held on to power in no small part by engaging in a blatant disregard for human rights. There are other countries of real concern in Ethiopia, the violence in the Tigray region, in Sudan, on the other hand, where there's been an encouraging transition to democracy recently. How do you plan to better support the fragile transition in Sudan while pushing back on those countries that are backsliding on their commitment to democracy, like Uganda, or some would argue Ethiopia?
So I think it starts with our very active engagement, not being AWOL when these problems emerge. Ethiopia, I share your deep concerns. We have seen a number of deeply concerning actions taken, including atrocities directed both at people in Tigray, directed at Eritrean refugees in Ethiopia. We, I think, need to see much greater access to the region, accountability, an effort to put a dialogue in place so that the issues that cause the conflict can actually be discussed and litigated as opposed to dealt with through violence. We need to see a restoration of communications. We need access for humanitarian assistance in the region. And I worry as well that what started there has the potential to be destabilizing throughout the Horn of Africa. So I would like to see American diplomacy fully engaged in trying to contend with this challenge. You cited a number of other places where we have, I share your concerns about the elections in Uganda, concerns in Cameroon recently, particularly violence directed at the Anglophone population. So there are a whole series of places where we have challenges where I think the United States can help make a difference, and that starts with being engaged.
Over 10 years after the Prime Ministerial text regulating the commercial motorbike sector in the Republic of Cameroon, the activity is still plagued by anarchy. Riders disrespect the highway code, and all senior divisional officers of the Wuri division in particular within the period of their stay in office have tried to solve this problem to no avail. The motorbike sector, particularly in the town of Douala, is plagued with serious disorder. For me, Armstrong Sandra has more.
The commercial motorbike sector in Cameroon has never been this disorganized since the adoption of modalities regulating the activity. 10 years after these measures were adopted, indiscipline and uncivic behavior has become the order of the day on our streets, though few of the commercial motorbike riders have distinguished themselves in exemplary behavior. On a large scale, thousands of commercial motorbike riders circulate in our towns and cities without official documents like driving licenses or tax receipts, under the watchful eyes of officials in charge of control of these documents. Even with the decree of 2008, successive senior divisional officers for the Wuri division, for example, have not been able to put order in the evergreen commercial motorbike sector. Ateba Bernard Okalia Bilai, Nasari Paul Biam, Bertrand Mache Joseph, and now Benjamin Butu have all failed in front of an uncontrollable or poorly mastered Douala commercial motorbike sector. Failure by the senior divisional officers to bring order, municipal officials and civil society actors came in with strategies like sensitization campaigns and workshops with commercial motorbike riders on the need to master the highway code and also be duly identified. Civil society actors have also raised the need to organize the circulation of commercial motorbike riders in zones in Douala, proposals which all failed to gain support from the city dwellers and bike riders in particular, leaving the sector more and more disorganized and attractive to bandits and individuals of the underworld. attempts to implement repressive measures have also failed to adjust these riders, who have now become the kings of the roads, violating traffic lights, causing accidents and riding on wrong ways at will. In an economic capital city like Douala, where thousands of helpless youths have fled the lack of opportunities in rural Cameroon to find food, observers question if the growing commercial motorbike sector is becoming an anarchical organization beyond the control of the state of Cameroon, or it is the choice of the government to let be struggling Cameroonians in order to avoid uprisings. Uprisings which observers say could be used as a form of expression against injustice and social inequalities accumulated over time.
Men, women and children in the Dugayo Jamai in Marwa 3 subdivision in the far north region of the country take to the streets protesting against what they qualify as violation of their rights, referring to an attempted forceful eviction, notably being masterminded, according to the inhabitants, by the traditional ruler of the area. They are calling on the governor to intervene in the matter. Details with Innocent.
This group of persons who presented themselves as inhabitants of Dugoy Jama, a locality in Marwa 3 subdivision, Jamare division of the far north region, protest over what they allege to be injustice crowned on their heads by the third-class chief in terms of expropriating the lands on which they have constructed and farmed. Some of the messages they brandish in relation to this read, "We are reclaiming our farmlands and houses forcefully taken from us. We are Cameroonian citizens. No to dictatorship."
Depuis un certain moment, nous vivons vraiment une vie terrible.
It's been a couple of years. The third-class chief has been depriving us of our rights and belongings. We have younger ones and children who need to go to school. But he comes evicting us from our houses, saying our lands and homes belong to him. He always orders us to sell our houses and properties to him at a cheap cost, while reselling them exorbitantly. We are frustrated.
Il faut que les autorités vraiment voient la situation. Qui veut arracher notre champ.
We are Cameroonians with rights. We can't abandon our houses and lands to him and go living elsewhere.
Nous ne sommes pas des réfugiés.
The traditional ruler in question debunks all the allegations made against him.
Ça fait déjà 13 ans que je suis le chef de ce quartier.
I have been the third-class chief of this community for 13 years. Majority of those demonstrating are not inhabitants of my quarter. If truly I have seized lands or houses of people, let them present evidence.
Au grand jamais vendu 1 mètre carré.
13 years in reign, I have never sold a meter of land. What then will push me to evict someone from their home? Let justice follow me if I have ever seized someone's land or sell their home.
Et les autorités doivent trancher cette affaire.
Meantime, the matter, which according to the accused traditional ruler is settlement of scores, is now expected to be handled by the judiciary.
Innocent as a reporting there. Now to Konsamba in the Mongo Division littoral region of the Republic of Cameroon. The people are also complaining over falling electric poles. Several electric poles and cables are lying on the ground in a number of neighborhoods in that part of the country, posing a problem of electrocution. Some of the electric cables lying on the ground are still transporting electric energy, and the people are complaining and expressing concerns over the security and safety of their children who often play around those falling electric poles. Details in this report by Charles Ekome.
Fallen and faulty electric poles littered all over the area, as well as electric cables lingering close to inhabited zones. Images like these can be seen in most quarters in the town of Kongsamba, Mungu division of the littoral region. This phenomenon is causing panic amongst inhabitants, considering the dangers involved, notably the risks of electrocution within the community. The problems of falling electric electric poles and electric cables continues to be a problem in our community. It is evident that if we continue to use wooden electric poles, we are going to have to change them every 5 years, or else, when they run out, they will fall to the ground. That's exactly why we have fallen electric poles littered all over, because they were not changed on time. These falling electric poles in Kongsamba has resulted to frequent power shortages in the area, which has triggered complaints from the local population. Reason why the Minister of Water and Energy has a plan this 2021 to revamp the town of Kongsamba with qualitative and quantitative energy. A survey team has been deployed on the field to evaluate the work left to be done.
Pour les équipes de la délégation départementale de l'eau et de l'énergie du Mungo,
the entire team of Water and Energy in the Mungu division will conduct a survey on the electrical faults and problems in the area, and will ensure that the dispositions put at our disposal will be put to good use. We are also going to identify the non-electrified areas in the division and relay the information to top management to take measures so as to enable the electrification of these areas. The meeting between the management of Water and Energy in the Mungu division, members of civil society alongside traditional rulers, has given hope to the local population who are expecting viable and resourceful energy months ahead.
Now, in news out of Cameroon, Joe Biden has been sworn in as the 46th U.S. president at the U.S. Capitol in Washington. Vice President Kamala Harris has taken her oath too, becoming the first woman to hold that position. In his first speech, Biden says, I quote, "This is democracy's day," and says the U.S. has much to do in this winter of peril, much to repair, and the new president says the country must confront the rise of white supremacy and reject manufactured facts. He goes on saying, a quote, "I will be a president for all Americans. I will fight as hard for those who did not support me as for those who did." Lady Gaga sang the U.S. national anthem, and Jennifer Lopez is performed with the U.S. Marines Band. Guests include former President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, George W. Bush and Laura Bush and Bill, as well as Hillary Clinton. Trump is not or did not attend his successor's inauguration, only the fourth president not to do so, but his deputy Mike Pence was there. Now coming up, the Democratic Republic of Congo had the last training session ahead of the second Group B match against Libya today, and unfortunately, Coach Florent Ibenge will be missing 5 of his players who tested positive to the for the coronavirus. And of course, according to Coach Florent Ibenge, Libya, their future opponent is a strong team, and just like his team, they will be on the hunt for the 3 points of the day. Florent, the coach of Libya, says that his boys defeated Congo on the 1 goal to nothing to occupy the first spot on Group B. A victory over Libya will guarantee them a spot in the next round of the competition. As we speak now, the indomitable Lions of Cameroon are locking horns with the Malians. The first half ended on a 1-1 draw. The 2 goals were scored in the first minutes of play, in the first few minutes of play. And that is it for the first part of this edition of the newscast on Equinoxe Television. Talking Points is up next. Barrister Neneba Innocent Akufo, and attorney and counselor at law in New York, a human rights defender, joining us. Thank you for your time today, Barrister.
Always a pleasure, Mr. Babila, and my entire regards to the Equinoxe team and on this historic day here in the United States, as the entire world watches a peaceful transition of power from one president to the other. It's again, once more, thank you so much for inviting me on the program to share my thoughts with the people of the Cameroons and all the African countries.
The new president of the United States of America, Joe Biden, qualified this day as Democracy's Day. What can we understand from that?
Well, it's Democracy's Day because democracy triumphed over anarchy. You know, hope triumphed over hate, and the future triumphed over the past. Because just about a couple of days ago, I was on your show and you asked me what we could learn from what happened in the United States Capitol. And I told you that the institutions worked, the institutions of democracy worked, because this is not a perfect system, but it's a system that has been tested for more than 200 years. It's a system that has survived, and it keeps perfecting itself as we go on. And, you know, the people's business, again, in the end, triumphed, and anarchy was shoved aside, because all the leaders of government came together, and Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. is our next president, the 46th president. And that's the beauty of this system of government, the way we want to define it. Not define it according to our own particular hubris or our own particular way of thinking about the system, but defining it according to the realities of the society in which we are. So if the current president says this is the triumph of democracy, that's exactly what it is. And we pray that we can always emulate this particular example.
Now, before this, during the confirmation hearings of the incoming Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, he specifically mentioned some African countries, including Cameroon, Uganda, and Ethiopia, and made mention of the Anglophone crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, expressing his concerns. What can you read beneath those lines?
Well, Mr. Babila, again, at one point you asked me sometimes, you know, about the constitution of a country, and I told you that whoever is victorious writes the history of a country, and it doesn't really matter at that moment whether the history is right or it reflects the realities of a society. And if you're looking at the government, who is put together as part of that particular structure, you can virtually or pretty much understand exactly how they're going to run that government. If you bring, like, when the former president, President Trump, brought Steve Bannon as his secretary, as his special advisor, that's a strict righties. That's, you know, it's somebody wants to bring America back. And that's the policies he has run all through his administration. And you see where he's headed himself, you know, by taking his baggage of grievances from the state capitol down to Florida, while a new hope, a new beginning is coming to America with the election of President Joe Biden. Now, about you know, who is in his cabinet? Anthony Blinken he's a very seasoned diplomat. He's not new on the political scene. He used to be the Undersecretary of State, Deputy Secretary of State under former President Barack Obama, which we all know, son of the soil. And, you know, he pretty much understands what Africa is. He pretty much understands the world. So he's no stranger to the world stage. And when he says, I mean, I heard that confirmation, you know, what he said during his confirmation debate on the floors of the Senate, and mentioning the Tigray in Ethiopia, and mentioning Uganda, where Bobby Wine is currently under house arrest because Museveni, another octogenarian, or another person who wants to cling to power for life, is stifling a younger generation from acceding to power or have their voices heard by always dictating to the people on their own terms and telling them that they've won the election when they absolutely did not win. you have to understand that the consular officer wanted to visit Bobby Wine, and they will not let that consular officer go. And they take note of all this stuff. So Anthony Blinken telling you that there is a crisis in the Anglophone region that needs to be resolved. It's just telling you that all the cosmetic things that they've been doing in the Cameroons by the Republic of Cameroon, in terms of a national dialogue, a special status, it doesn't cut the chase. That's no solution to the problems of the English-speaking people of the southern Cameroons.
Barrister, as far as U.S. involvement in efforts to resolve these conflicts in the northwest and southwest regions and other African countries is concerned, what is going to change under President Joe Biden?
Exactly, that's where I was heading to. If you want to know who Biden is, you look about, there is a footage that runs online when he was at the floor of the Senate, when apartheid, this was like in 1986, when apartheid was the nom de jour in Africa. They were reigning high and all that stuff. He was impassionate when he delivered that speech on the floor of the Senate, telling you that this is not a regime that we can support. Constructive engagement, which Thatcher and Reagan espoused then, was not really working because it benefited the white people. So if you want to see what the American policy will be in Africa, and specifically to the Southern Cameroons issue, you look at the type of people he's put into power. And Tony Blinken, when he says it, he means it as the Secretary of State, because these are people, they've seen this stuff all through and they know about it. And don't forget to know that the incoming judiciary chairman of the Judiciary Committee, who happens to be a Democrat from the great state of Illinois, actually said it, on the floor of the Senate about the sufferings of the Southern Cameroonians. He actually said it, that these are people who came into this dispensation as two different people. At some point, they have been oppressed, and until they've been killed by an unjust war. And that's what, that's exactly what this administration is going to look at. They will see into all those things because they have the power, they can restructure stuff. And let me bring you to one thing again. When George Bush, George Bush Jr. was the president of the United States at some point, you have to understand that there was a raging war in Liberia when Charles Taylor was still in power. And all what he did, I know he wanted to salvo his image in what he was doing in Iraq, but all he did was he stationed 600 Marines in the coast of Liberia. And what happened? Charles Taylor left power and went to Nigeria, and today Liberia is in peace. So we have to understand that these things do not last forever. We have empires that have risen, they've crumbled. If you look into history, you look at Weimar Germany, you look at the Habsburgs, you look at even the British Empire, it collapsed. From where? Even the Roman Empire, the Turkish Empire, all these things, they collapse. So I don't believe that the empire that the oligarchs in Cameroon or the aristocrats in Cameroon, they're building, this is something that will be sustainable forever. At some point, it will crumble. But please, I always plead to those who lead these people, let history judge you from a right perspective. Fight for your people. If you die fighting for your people, history will judge you positively.
History will judge you positively.
For somebody else.
Barrister Aniniba Innocent Akufo, attorney and counselor at law in the New York State of in New York, and of course human rights defender and major proponent of decolonization. Thank you for joining me today.
Always a pleasure, Mr. Babila. Thank you so much.
Coming up, Dr. Etan Ewane, coordinator of the Cameroon Patriotic Diaspora, joins me from Germany. Dr. Etan Ewane, coordinator of Cameroon Patriotic Diaspora, is joining us from Germany. Doctor, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Babila, and it's a great pleasure being with you one more time.
Right. During confirmation hearings of the incoming U.S. Secretary of State, Tony Blinken specifically mentioned some African countries, including Cameroon, Uganda, and Ethiopia. He expressed concerns with ongoing developments in these countries, including the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon. What can you deduce from that?
Well, Mr. Babila, I think Mr. Anthony Blinken made a couple of revelations on possible policy choices of the next U.S. administration. And what we should expect from his revelations is that there will be a significant paradigm shift in U.S.-Africa relations. And Anthony Blinken clearly indicated in his confirmation hearing that he will emphatically change the trajectory of U.S. foreign policy. What does this mean for Africa? It means we're going to see a couple of reversals of past UN policy choices with regards to Africa. And Anthony Blinken placed emphasis on rebuilding and re-engaging alliances to deal with transnational threats. So if we want to go deep into what we should be expecting, I think we have to there are a couple of things we need to know about the man, Anthony Blinken. First of all, this is a seasoned policy maker who has served different administrations, the Clinton, Bush, Obama administration, and he has been for a couple of years a member of the National Security Council. So this is somebody who has a deep knowledge of international relations. So he was 6 years in U.S. Senate and worked very closely with the future President Biden at the Capitol Hill in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. So, and we know also that from his past policy choices, Mr. Blinken is an interventionist. If you go back into history, in 2003, I think, he supported and advocated for the intervention of the U.S. in Iraq, and in 2011, he supported the U.S. intervention in Libya. So, and as Deputy Secretary of State in the Obama administration, Blinken advocated for more robust U.S. involvement in the Syrian conflict. So he's not someone who believes that sovereignty should be the end of international relations. So I think there's every reason for people at the 2D to start panicking, because Mr. Blinken will go he is a very strong advocate of human rights. And what we've seen in the past 4 years is a complete transformation of Cameroon as a breeding ground for human rights abusers. So there's every reason for people to panic in Yaoundé. Also, we know Mr. Blinken has been a multilateralist, an internationalist, and a Europeanist, because he has Jewish origins. So this is someone who believes in collective action. And one of the things that rallies international support is always issues relating to human rights. So I think Mr. Blinken will not hesitate to use U.S. power to intervene in Cameroon. So if the authorities in Yaoundé continue in the same line as they've done for the past 4 years, I think we fear for a direct U.S. intervention. And Mr. Blinken, having that capacity to rally support, he might be able to convince some European allies for an intervention in Cameroon. So this is a possibility in the next coming years.
There's a possibility in the next coming years. Now, apart from a possible direct intervention of the United States in the resolution of conflicts in the countries he cited, notably Uganda, Ethiopia, and Cameroon, with the situation in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. What other thing is likely going to change under the Trump administration with regards to the country's technical support to African countries in the resolution of conflicts like the one in the English-speaking regions of Cameroon?
I think before, like you know, Mr. Babila, intervention is always the last option. So the possibility is the U.S. will freeze further technical support to Cameroon, and they might go further to impose sanctions. Like I said, you know, diplomacy is always the best option, because intervention is costly and could lead to a loss of lives. So diplomacy is much cheaper, though sometimes it's quite slow. So the possibility is we might see sanctions, targeted sanctions against officials in Yaoundé. We might see the freezing of assets of a certain number of people in the Yaoundé regime. And we could see also possibly visa restrictions to members of Mr. Biya's administration, beginning with Mr. Biya himself, because he's the captain of the ship. So there are possible diplomatic sanctions that can be taken. We could see also a complete destruction of the Cameroonian economy, economic sanctions that could have far-reaching repercussions over decades. So there are a couple of diplomatic sanctions that will be put in place before any possible intervention takes place.
President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris set up a team to reflect on America's politics vis-a-vis Africa, and that was before the election, and the group recommended a greater commitment and consideration for the African continent and its people. What do you foresee in this light as far as greater commitment and consideration from the United States of America vis-a-vis African countries is concerned?
Yeah, Mr. Babila, first of all, international relations is more about interest. Countries have strategic and geopolitical interest. It is just obvious that the U.S. is beginning to develop more interest in Africa, especially after the discovery that most of the gains from oil in the Middle East was diverted to sponsor international terrorism. So we can see that the Gulf of Guinea, to which the Cameroon belongs, it has become increasingly attractive to the U.S. and other European partners. So we will see a more commitment, a greater commitment of the U.S. in Africa, specifically in the region of the Gulf of Guinea, which is also a huge producer of petroleum and other mineral resources. So I think it's of great strategic interest to the U.S. to be more committed in Africa, and especially in a country like Cameroon, which remains one of the buffer countries in the Gulf of Guinea, and especially in the Central African region. I think it's no secret to anyone that if Cameroon crumbles today, most of the Central African countries will follow suit. So it's in everybody's interest, including that of the United States, to stabilize Cameroon, because by stabilizing Cameroon, you stabilize an entire region, and that might expand far beyond the Central African region, getting into the Gulf of Guinea.
Recently, the Trump administration imposed travel restrictions, travel ban on a country like Nigeria, which is one of the top countries in terms of economic power on the African continent. And there are many other decisions like this that the Trump administration took, which were very unfriendly with the African nations. Do you expect these decisions to be reversed?
Well, like I said earlier, there will be a couple of policy reversals by the new administration, because some of the policy choices that were made by Trump were considered by so many experts and policy as unfounded. Now, the sanctions imposed on Nigeria were really not grounded. Of course, we're not saying Nigeria hasn't got problems. Nigeria has a couple of issues to deal with. But if we look at what the decisions that were made by the Trump administration, we can clearly say they were selective, based on reasons that were best known to him. So why did he leave Cameroon out? Cameroon had more serious problems than Nigeria. Ethiopia is facing the same problems like Cameroon today. And so I think the new administration will apply more rationality in dealing with African countries and in imposing sanctions.
How will this be profitable to the common man in Cameroon, in Nigeria, in Uganda, in Ethiopia?
The reason behind sanctions is to push the governing bureaucrats in Africa to work for better governance, or to work for good governance. The problem Africa faces today, it's the unequal distribution of national resources. Now, you have most of the African countries have created what Michel Foucault called the perpetual warfare state. So you have a group of individuals who organize the country around themselves and their family members and friends, and use the resources, siphon all national resources to serve their own personal interest. So, and this has been the main reason for discontent and the strife, the civil strife that we experience across many African countries. So improve governance that is participatory, that is inclusive, that is accountable, of course will benefit the common man, because every citizen should be able to draw benefits from the resources of the country. So there should be an improved governance that will create channels for the common man to participate in the running of the affairs of the state. So imposing sanctions and pushing those states to build accountable institutions and to kill the phenomenon of strong men and promote that of strong institutions will be to the benefit of the common man. That's what governance should be about. Governance should be to improve the lives of the citizens and not the lives of those governing them.
Recently, the CPD issued a statement condemning the recent deadly incidents recorded within the context of the Anglophone crisis in the two English-speaking regions. And just yesterday, an explosion was recorded in the Bamenda. A locally made explosive device exploded around T Junction and left one person injured, and another explosion was recorded in Bengui, still in the northwest region of the country, and several persons were arrested. And the Minister of Territorial Administration was in the northwest region, where he called on parents to go into the bushes and bring out their children who were carrying guns in the bushes. And he also called on the population to collaborate. The population of Babaju in the west region of the country, close to the border with the northwest, where an attack occurred recently and left over 4 elements of the National Armed Forces dead and 2 civilians. He called on the population there to collaborate with the security and defense forces to fight what he qualifies as pockets of resistance. What do you think about these calls coming from the Minister of Territorial Administration, urging parents and the population to put their hands on deck and collaborate with the military to put an end to the atrocities being recorded in those 2 regions?
I think one thing that characterizes this Minister of Territorial Administration is this irrationality. Asking parents to go to the bushes and call back the children is being extremely simplistic. I think the problems in Cameroon, it's deep-rooted and it's almost becoming endemic. So looking for superficial solutions to a deep-rooted problem, it's losing touch with reality. Let me add to what you said. Just this morning I received information of a shooting at the Government Technical High School in Ombe. And we at the CPD, we've been persistent, we've been consistent in our approach. We condemn any form of violence, irrespective of who is behind it. So anything that will lead to the death of any Cameroonian, any action that will lead to the injuring any Cameroonian is reprehensible, irrespective of who is behind it. We condemn it. Now, and we've always advocated for dialogue, because that's the only way out of the current difficult situation in which we find ourselves. So it's time for the regime in Yaoundé to prioritize dialogue and drop the military option. Asking people to come out of the bushes, it's no guarantee that they will stay alive. So those people also have genuine fears, and they cannot leave the bushes. After all, it's the government that sent them into the bushes. So the government should open a genuine dialogue. If they consider the Ambazonian fighters also to be Cameroonians, then there should be every reason to try to talk to them. You cannot categorize them as terrorists, refuse to talk to them, and at the same time you're giving instructions, because that's not an appeal. You're giving instructions for them to drop arms. You did not give them arms. So if you want them to drop down arms, those people have leaders who are known. Talk to their leaders. Those who ask them to pick up arms will be the same people to ask them to drop down arms, so that Cameroonians can look at each other into the eye, tell each other the truth, where it pains, and together we can find solutions. We cannot continue on this path because it's leading us all into a collective destruction. We are collectively destroying ourselves, destroying the nation that we claim is dear to us. Dialogue is the last solution. Whether we fight for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, like others have done in the past, at the end, you will sit at the dialogue table. So why don't we engage it right now, sit on a negotiating table so we can save the remaining lives in the Southern Cameroons?
You said together we can find a solution. Is it not in that perspective that the Minister of Territorial Administration is calling on parents and the population of those two regions to put their hands on deck, to come on board by going into the bushes and convincing their children to come out and be received in the DDR centers, by denouncing perpetrators of atrocities in those two regions to the administration, to the security and defense forces?
Embarking on a DDR project amidst an ongoing conflict is a misplaced priority. That same minister, I listened to him on a couple of days ago on RFI, Radio France International, when he said a cessation of fire, a cessation of hostility, it's not applicable in the Cameroonian context. So that's not someone who's willing to work for peace. That's someone who constantly sends out threats. And every time he makes a pronouncement, he aggravates the situation because he provokes. And that's where I think from his statements, after every time he makes a statement, we see a couple of violent attacks across the southern Cameroons. The minister has to sit back, think twice, and know exactly the type of words he sends out. Of course, we all want the peace. Everybody is tired of this conflict. But then we have to be genuine. We have to be honest to each other as Cameroonians. We need to tell each other the truth. The minister has to sit back and evaluate the 4 years of the military option and see if they've been winning. And like I said, there's never going to be a victor in this ongoing conflict. And I think the minister says the army is going to win. Well, we would like the minister to come on television, look at Cameroonians into their eyes and tell them what victory in the fratricida war looks like. What will it look like? What form will it take? What is he going to brandish as victory? The heads of Cameroonians or the heads of southern Cameroonians? That's what he's going to take home and present to the rest of Cameroonians as victory. Now, this is the highest level of irrationality, and there is need for a policy rethink in Yaoundé.
Are you saying that the parents and the population, they have nothing to do to solve this problem, to contribute in solving the problem?
Of course they do. Of course they do. Of course, Mr. Babila, if you ask me today to go to the bushes and call on the Amazonian fighters to drop the guns, I will be happy. I'll be willing to do that. But then, what guarantee do I have? What guarantee do I give them that after they drop the guns, after they come out of the bushes, they will stay alive? Of course, I don't want anyone. No one is going to take responsibility for the blood of another. If you get someone out of the bushes and he eventually gets killed, that's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. So that's why we are saying we have to be genuine. We need to create an enabling environment in which we all can sit together, talk to each other. When you say you cannot talk to the Amazonian leaders, and at the same time you're asking the Amazonian fighters to drop the arms, knowing very well that they have leaders from whom they receive orders, then you're being irrational.
Dr. Ita Ewane, coordinator of Cameroon Patriotic Diaspora, joining us from Munich in Germany. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Babila, for hosting me.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. Equinoxe is up next with Serge Lanto.